What's good YouTube? It's me, your boy Squiddy, back in another video. Today I want to talk about the Horus cards. These cards were very hyped in the community. There's a lot of buzz and chatter about these cards in general, but I think they're personally a trap, and I don't think you should be playing them for the current meta game, at least not in decks like tier limits. And here's why. I mean, obviously I know people are hyping it for the fact that you can get a lot of bodies on the board. They're free extenders without committing your normal summon. You're able to make powerful rank 8s going first, like Coach King Gia Trainer to draw 3 cards, Full Harbinger to negate spells, or better yet, Galaxy Full-Trod Lord to be able to negate hand traps like Nibiru, Drone Lockbird before starting your plays with your main engine. And you can even make powerful synchros like Baron Defleur when you have something like Diviner the Herald to tune into a level 10. But I'm not saying the meat and potatoes are very bad. Like, obviously when you get the combo off, these cards are amazing, but there are a lot of drawbacks and weaknesses that I don't think are immediately obvious leading up to Agov's release. But now that we had time to kind of see them in action, see people test them, and also see how the meta's shaping up, because obviously Agov is one of the most influential sets in a long time. There are a lot of good cards like SP, the Anti-Zeus cards. There are a lot of little knickknacks and Easter eggs in this pack, and Horus is only a small piece of the pie. And even though the cards read really well, I think because of the way the metagame is ramping up, it's definitely the type of engine that should only fit in a specific deck, and certainly not in a deck like tier elements. Obviously, Vampire Zombie is good, but I just don't think that it's enough. So let's talk about it in this video. We start at Mseti, the Glory of Horus. This card allows you to send itself as a cost alongside another card in your graveyard to add a copy of King Sarcophagus, which obviously sets out all the Horus cards. When this card is on the field, you can bring back any Horus names from the graveyard for free once per turn, non-inherent special summon. And from there, you actually get to draw a card on top of that. So it essentially replenishes the net minus. Now, the only thing about this card is the fact that it gets stopped really easily by Ash Blossom. If somebody ashes this, it hurts a lot, because the chances are, unless you're discarding something that can actually be used from the grave, something useful like a Blackwing Zephyros or perhaps a Water Enchantress of the Adventure Engine to get started, you're basically going neg. And even if you do send something good, you're still getting a 1-for-1 trade in your opponent's favor, because they are dealing with both of your cards, right? They're dealing with 2 cards from your hand, so you're kind of wasting still a resource from your hand. Even though you still get the effect in the graveyard, you would have been able to still get some mileage out of that card in your hand otherwise. But more importantly, the fact that you lose to Ash, which is like the most powerful prominent hand trap right now because it's good against everything, is just really upsetting. And then the fact that Mseti is like the only one that actually does anything. If you look at the rest of the Horus cards, like Dumatef, and also the Happy, it's really funny, he's named Happy, as well as this Queb, whatever, however you pronounce this. These cards don't do anything. They're bricks. They're really literally the definition of bricks. They do not do anything unless you play something like Trade In, or if you happen to open King Sarcophagus, which you generally don't, because this card is not good on its own. What do you have to do to commit this card? Well, you have to commit this card to the table first and foremost, and then you have to use the effect to dish a card to be able to foolish something. The steps that you have to go through to actually make this live in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no bueno. Never mind like 10 years ago, it probably would also have the struggle. But this is interrupted by so many things. Obviously, you have to invest 2 cards because, one, you're investing the actual sarcophagus itself. It doesn't do anything for you. It's just a card that you lose out of your hand, you put on the table. Then you use the effect to discard another card. Now, in decks like tier elements where this engine supposedly shines the best, there are not a lot of cards that you actually want to send to the graveyard that would get the effects. Remember, you're sending as cost, so you're not getting any of the effects. Unless you're discarding something like a Trivia Karma or like one of the Kelbeck or Akidos, there's nothing else you can really send, or one of the Shufflers, I guess. But everything else is kind of a minus. If your opponent interacts with you with a Cosmic Cyclone, it's horrible. If you're going second, this card is horrible because you place it on the table. Any Omni Negate will just take care of this. It'll ensure, or any card to remove, even IP Masquerena and SP Knight, because the fact that we got SP, a lot of people are not thinking about this card, it directly counters King Sarcophagus because they're always going to be able to make it using an IP Masquerena to banish the King Sarcophagus, so you will be losing cards in that trade. Like, it's just not worth it. And it's only really good when you do see Mseti. Like, you don't want to draw any of these cards, and you don't really want to draw King Sarcophagus on its own either. Even though that kind of turns your engine online, you're still spending 1 card in the form of a King Sarcophagus to make it live, which is why I don't really like that. Next, the core reason is the fact that the rank 8s are just not very good, in my opinion. If you think about Hope Harbinger and powerful monsters that are good going first, I mean, sure, like Galaxy Photon Lord is one of the best rank 8s because of the fact that it negates any monster effect, including Drone Lockbird or the Nibiru. So in a deck that actually is combo heavy and actually loses hard to one of those hand traps, I could definitely see this engine being played going first and probably sided out going second, if anything. But it's definitely just allows you to push through. Photon Lord is good enough. I don't think you would ever really want to make Coach King. It's one of those meme-worthy cards because if you think about it, you're investing a lot of cards. You're getting the M Seti, obviously, as well as the King Sarcophagus. So you're investing the King Sarcophagus. If you start with M Seti, that's one card. You're discarding another card, that's two cards. And then you're discarding another card, that's three cards. So your three cards will give you a Coach King Jane Trainer. He replaces itself, so you draw three more cards. So, I mean, it's okay. But it's like if you're already getting to that point, you're probably able to make better plays leveraging the other XYZs that we just showed, like either Hope Harbinger or Galaxy Photon Lord to strengthen your end board. Because GN Trainer does nothing for your end board. After you draw the cards, it's kind of like cycling cards. You still have to be able to set up an end board, and that just doesn't do it, in my opinion. Next is the fact that these cards just take a lot of space. If you think about the bare minimum engine, you have to play 3 M Seti, 1 Sarcophagus, and 1 Happy. That's already 5 cards. Some players play 2 Sark. If you play it in tiers, it's just really bad if you mill the King Sarcophagus and then the rest of the engine is dead. Not to mention in any deck that you just play the 5 cards, the moment you use M Seti, the rest of the cards are just diminishing returns in your deck. So if you continue to draw into consecutive M Setis or Happies, then they're not going to be live at all because your King Sarcophagus is gone. Now, if you play 2 copies of King Sarcophagus, that just contributes to more bricks because you don't want to draw this card. And it's just like you're playing 6 cards. It's basically an engine that you could replace with non-engine cards that allow you to kind of stabilize the game because these cards are more extenders, but they're very awkward extenders because you have to commit the King Sarcophagus onto the table and your opponent can interact in the closed game state before you're able to special summon back monsters from the graveyard. So that's sort of the argument that I have against these cards. And of course, in tier limits, being able to make the zombie vampire is a big, great thing. But it's not good in the mirror match. You don't want to mill your opponent either. Like a lot of times you don't really want to use Kelbeck or Agito in the mirror match in the tiers because there's a chance that your opponent can actually be able to mill Godlike and then you just lose because of variance, right? So that's why this card is not that great. In the decks, like the non-tier matchup, obviously there's some, it's pretty good, right? Getting this card, milling 4, special summoning back monster. I cannot deny that this is good, but I think the fact that King Sarcophagus is just not very good going second makes it so it's just almost not worth it. In tier limits, you almost want to play better cards that are good draws and good mills, because these cards are not good mills. You might think they're good mills. You're like, oh, I'm milling names. I can just activate a King Sarcophagus later and summon them back, but you're not going to be able to see the King Sarcophagus if you only play 1 copy or 2 copy. There's just no real reason to like these mills are just terrible if you mill these cards. And again, if you mill King Sarcophagus and that's your only copy, then you're kind of out of luck. So those are basically the core reasons why I just don't like this engine. I think there are a lot better engines out there, and the fact that obviously SP Little Knight just being such a crazy card kind of makes it so this engine is worse than ever. It's just way too slow. I could definitely see players playing this in the right deck, in a deck that actually has room for another engine. For example, the Centurion archetype that's coming out soon. I think it definitely fits in there because you're able to get bodies to synchro monsters into, as well as be able to get bodies on board, make Galaxy Photon Lord, because that deck has a minimal engine. If a deck has a minimal engine and you have space for more engine on top of the non-engine, then definitely I could see this come in. But it has to fit in the right decks, and I feel like in a deck like Tournament, it just doesn't do enough for what the tier limits deck actually wants to accomplish. So those are my thoughts there, but I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. Do you agree or disagree? Are these cards actually really good, or am I wrong? I could be proven wrong this weekend because of YCS Indy, but let's see. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Other than that, we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.